All right, welcome everyone to the Commissioner's Student Advisory Council for April 11th, 2023. We have a few adjustments that we had to make today. First and foremost, Commissioner Glass is actually participating in a summit with the Council of Chief State School Officers in Washington, D.C. today. It's a really great opportunity for him to learn from other state leaders, and we're looking forward to receiving feedback from him when he gets back. So he will not be at the meeting today, but Dr. Woods Tucker is here, our Deputy Commissioner, and is kind of taking the place of Commissioner Glass today in his absence. So Dr. Woods Tucker will be kind of helping me lead this meeting, and then also day one of our Kentucky Board of Education meeting a little bit later today. Second of all, just wanted to note the elephant in the room, which is that we had a water main break in Frankfort, which impacted our building. And sadly, that meant that we could not have the meeting at the Sauer building today. Really sad about that, because we had some great opportunities for you to interact with KDE staff, and also our state school marshal and John Akers over at the Center for School Safety. But everybody has been able to join virtually. So I guess the good thing about COVID-19 pandemic is that we all can divert pretty quickly and go virtually when needed. But unfortunately, that means that we can't see you in person today. And this is our last in-person meeting for this school year. So we'll get to our seniors a little bit later and talk with you a little bit about some of the things that we have for you, and have a little discussion a little bit later. Dr. Woods Tucker, did you want to have some opening words for our students?
Yes, Tony. Good morning. Good morning to everyone. As Tony said, we were really looking forward to seeing you in person, but I think we'll maybe have another opportunity before the year is up to see you all in person, especially our graduating seniors. And it's certainly a pleasure to have the opportunity to sit in stead for our great commissioner, Dr. Glass, and he's going to bring us some great information back from Washington, D.C. to continue helping to push the agency as well as our public school system here in the great Commonwealth forward. So really excited about that, excited about his presentation and what he's going to share with us. And speaking of excitement, Tony's given me 5 minutes, and when I have 5 minutes to talk with students, I'm certainly going to use all 5 of them up. I think I've already used at least one of them up. So Tony will give me the proverbial hook here in a little bit. But spring break, how many of you had an opportunity to enjoy spring break? And if so, maybe share with us if you did anything exciting for spring break. It's so important that we take time out for ourselves that we call self-care. And that means not just adults, but also students. So please take time out, because if you don't take time out for yourselves, you won't be able to function. So my family and I had an opportunity last weekend. We went to Phoenix, Arizona, and I got a chance to make it up, barely made it up Camelback Mountain. In Phoenix, Arizona. I thought I was going to die going up the mountain. Same thing coming down. So any of you, anything exciting for spring break, just put it in the chat, or if you want to share, please feel free to do so as well. Or if you have plans for spring break as well. Another thing that I know about our seniors and our juniors here, that prom season is coming up. Someone said sleep. That's right. Get your sleep in. I was at Murray State University last weekend before last, and I talked with some of the college students there, and when I asked them what was really keeping them up and what did they need to really help them be more fulfilled, and they said they need more sleep. And I see Tony there's put in. She just came back from a beautiful cruise. We saw some outstanding pictures from Tony's time on her cruise. But again, one of the really exciting things about being a junior or senior is prom. And I'm sure you all are busy picking out your prom dresses and picking out your prom suits and so forth, your tuxes and so forth. That was an exciting time for me way back in 1984. And so, yes, 1,000 years ago. But I know we have some great music aficionados here, some historians of music, and I'm sure Bentley and some of the other folks like Anastasia would probably recognize some of these songs here from 1984. The number one song in the land during prom season was When Doves Cry by Prince, followed by the great Tina Turner, What Love Got to Do with It. Then followed by one of my favorite artists, two of my favorite artists of all time, Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson, Say, Say, Say. Then, of course, probably my Get Up and Go song was by Kenny Loggins, the great Kenny Loggins, Footloose, that stays in my head. In fact, it's in my head right now. So anyway, find time to really enjoy these closing weeks. I can't believe, Tony, that we're saying to our students here on the Commissioner Student Advisory Council that we're getting close to the end of the year, and certainly want to thank them for their great work. And then, of course, as we close out the program, we have something special for our seniors. But right now, as I wind up my 5 minutes, Tony, we're going to go ahead and welcome Heather Bushelman, our coordinator of comprehensive student counseling services, and she's going to give us a beautiful mindful minute.
Thomas, I wish you would have told me about the prom theme. I would have researched some music back from 1996. So,
Okay.
I'll have to get on that and see what the top songs were from my senior year. So
Yeah. Well, I dressed up for the prom. I was going to show off my new suit today. I was excited, so I'm dressed for the prom. Okay. Thanks, Mrs. Bushelman.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Dr. Woods Tucker. I'm excited to be here as always with you all. This is one of the highlights of my month, getting to actually see students. As always, even if it's virtual today, I was looking forward to seeing you all in person. I had an activity planned, but in light of the events that happened yesterday, part of what we want to make sure we're mindful of is embracing what happened and just leaving a safe space for us today, because you all know this is a safe space for all of you, adults as well. And when we have things like that happen, we need to ensure that we take time to reflect, and to acknowledge your own feelings, your own emotions, because if you don't, that could lead to some of that burnout that we've talked about before in the previous meetings we've had. So I first just want to start out by opening it up to all of you. And you can type in comments, or of course, feel free to unmute. Any comments, any reflections, anything that you might want to say about what happened in Louisville yesterday.
I don't have anything particularly special, but I just think I don't know what to think anymore, because it seems like we have to deal with this more than I would like to, and that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
go ahead, Rima.
For me, it happened like 10 minutes away from like where my school was. So like when we found out the news at 9 a.m., it was kind of like at that point we were all like so desensitized to it. Just because like we feel like it happened so often, and like even though like it was so close to us, like it's almost like we knew we were safe from it, which is just like such a weird feeling to have, knowing it's so close. And it's like really weird because I was doing some like youth led work with some other people in the city, like at the bank, like less than 2 weeks ago. So like some of the people involved, like we knew of, and it was just like a really weird feeling that like people could like, I don't know, like such big supporters of the work we were doing were like involved in this thing. But I think it's just like more of a push for me to like work towards like school safety, mental health, and like everything along those lines.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so sorry that you have personally were connected to some of the people that worked at the bank.
I think the word that's interesting you use is desensitized, which is, yeah, it's I think that's what's happened. But what you did mention that you did feel safe. Um, so I do like that you had that feeling of some type of safety, even though it was so close to you yesterday. But yeah, the word desensitized is just about perfect for what's happening, unfortunately. All right, anybody else? That. Oh, Bentley put something in the chat. The U.S. is the only country in the world with such a prolific gun violence issue. And it's about time something gets done about it. Yeah, you are not alone there, Bentley. Any other reflections or thoughts or any comments? As you do process what happened, I know in the days to come, of course, the news and social media. Just keep in mind your own well-being. And so some things we want to make sure after something like this happens is number one, any feelings or any emotions you may have, they are validated and they are okay. So if you feel anger, that's perfectly normal. If you feel some type of grief, anxiety, if it's a trauma reminder for some of you, that maybe we're close to some of the people who were affiliated with the bank, and or it could be a reminder of something that's happened before. So any type of reminders, it's obviously going to bring up some extra feelings. Remember, we talked about embracing some of that uncomfortable, and all of that is perfectly normal, and that's okay. And so some things to just consider is to make sure, number one, you have your support system. Somebody, at least one person, hopefully more, that you can ask questions to, vent if you need to, comments, somebody or a few people who are safe, for you to be able to do that too. And for your own sake, just be careful of how much news and social media that you might endure. I know me and Tony talked a few minutes really briefly this morning about how it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole. I know I use Twitter a lot. I actually do not have Facebook, but it's very easy to scroll and just keep going. So I have to catch myself not getting too far gone in that. So just make sure that you're taking breaks. If you do kind of see yourself watching too much news or anything like that. And also, just make sure that you're still enjoying your activities. Like, you all mentioned your trips, and I know some exciting things are going to happen between now and in summertime, and just know that you are safe. And to always proactively, do things just to help and ensure your safety, just whatever is going to make you feel comfortable. I got to visit Disney World a couple times over the break. That was kind of one of the things, unfortunately, I did was looking around for the nearest exits and just safe spaces. And unfortunately, I think we have to do that now. So anything you have to do to take care of yourself, please do that. And just know that you are safe, and wherever you are right now, you are safe. And of course, if you ever need anything else, or any resources, feel free to reach out to me, because I'll be happy to share anything. I know we have some for your schools, or even like your families, about how to talk about some of these issues. So, okay. All right. Well, Tony, I think that's all I had for this morning.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Heather. I really appreciate it. And always appreciate the time to have our kids think about their mental health. It's so very important. And it's always important for even the adults in the room to have that reminder as well. All right, so our next item on the agenda, we have some special guests with us today. We have our state school officer, Ben Wilcox, and we have John Akers, the executive director with the Kentucky Center for School Safety. And then we also have Jennifer Taylor, who does a lot. Well, I'll let her introduce herself because I know she wears a lot of hats, but does a lot with the tip line. I don't want to say it's a tip line, but it is a tip line, I guess. And have them present. So everyone on the call is familiar with your brief that you all provided for the white paper back in January. They've read through it and just wanted to kind of have a discussion with you all on the Office of the State School Security Marshal and the Center for School Safety, and some things that they feel would be maybe beneficial or helpful to you all, but also to perhaps receive some feedback from you, because you are in fact in our high schools and in our schools, and we know that your advice and your feedback has been very valuable to us at the Department for Education, and I think would be very valuable to both Ben and John. So Ben, John, and Jennifer, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
John, you want to go ahead?
Okay, I've been the person that gets to hit the ball off the tee. Can I have a quick moment about rock and roll? Okay, when I was listening to the deputy commissioner there, I just had to say that there are some songs that have transcended time. From 1959, there was a song called Shout by the Isley Brothers, which are still being used today across the country. And for rock and roll trivia people, the #1 shortest hit in rock and roll history is a song called Stay by Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs that lasted 1 minute and 36 seconds. That's the shortest rock and roll song that hit #1 in the charts right there. And Jackson Browne, a little bit later, like 20, 30, 40 years later, redid that song. So I just thought I'd let you know that this old guy knows his rock and roll a little bit. It's a pleasure
John,
to
you would be my
shoe-in
for.
And I'm going to start a little bit more talking about school safety in a few minutes, but a couple of quick comments about myself. I'm a retired high school principal. I came from basically Paul Ernst Dunbar High School, and I think one of our members is a Bulldog from there. So I want to say hello to that student there. And then I took the role of the director of the Kentucky Center for School Safety 22 years ago, and hadn't been a principal for 25 years. I thought, well, I knew it all until I got into this job, and I found out there's a whole panacea of things out there that I had no idea about. And so I've been learning for the last 22 years how this school safety thing has just changed over the years. We don't even use the term best practices anymore in school safety. We use the term current trends because things have changed so much from almost year to year that if we say something was a best practice 5 years ago, it's not the best practice now. So that's just kind of a little introductory thing here. Secondly, I want to praise you all for your work that you did on your focus on school safety paper. It's very well done. You hit national information extremely well, and it shows that you did a whole lot of work. The good news is that we're going to talk a little bit more about today. Kentucky doesn't follow national trends, and that's a good thing because many, many states are calling our center and calling Ben's shop here about what are you doing in Kentucky? How are we doing things here? And so there are so many things that we want to share with you here in a few minutes as we go through your report here and kind of let you know a little bit more about what's going on inside the state of Kentucky. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Ben to let him introduce himself. Then we'll let Jennifer introduce herself. Then we'll go through the report and kind of share some information with you that we think might be beneficial.
Good morning. My name is Ben Wilcox. I'm the State School Security Marshal for the state of Kentucky. My office was created with the passing of the School Safety and Resiliency Act. Our office's main goal is to have regional compliance officers that you may see coming into your schools. We wear black shirts and khaki pants, and we come in and do risk assessments on every locally controlled and state-controlled school now in the Commonwealth. Our main goal is to make sure that the mandates are followed that were set forth by the School Safety and Resiliency Act, which concludes many, many different facets of school safety, everywhere from access control, making sure your doors are closed during instructional time, making sure that the check-in processes are working well at your school, along with mental health in SROs within your school, or something we're very much working on. Besides being compliance officers, we also like to be resources for schools. So when we go in and actually do risk assessments, if we see deficiencies or questions at your school, we try to work with your administration, work with your students to get the school to be as safe as possible. One of the other things that our office is undertaking starting next year is the Department of Criminal Justice Training, where our office is located, is in charge of SRO training. Our office at the Marshal's office will be taking over the SRO training next year to make it regional and easier for the SROs to get trained, so they don't have to travel to Richmond to actually do the training. One of the things I want to talk about today is really want to touch on the SRO training and training that we do for administrators and teachers required by law in the state of Kentucky. We have a phenomenal training here in the state for SROs. We have a lot of states trying to chase our SRO training and basically mimic it the way we're doing it. There's not many other states, and I think we've only found one that has as much training required by our SROs. Our SROs have to have 120-hour certification beyond their basic training. And I also want to kind of go over some of the things that we train in basic training for officers that will be responding to schools. So that's what I'll be hitting on when we get to my portion of the presentation, but wanted to give you a heads up on what our office does and what we're here for. And I'd love to hear some feedback on what you think and what is keeping you up at night, or what makes you feel uncomfortable at schools, because that's what we need to work on. We've got to listen to students because they're the ones that are going into schools every day. We love talking to staff and we love talking to students. So I just appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate your all's desire to try to make this safe, your school safe, and obviously the rest of the state of Kentucky schools safe.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Taylor, and I'm with the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security. I'm the school safety analyst. I'm also the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Program Coordinator, as well as a master trainer in the DHS Behavioral Threat Assessment and Management Group. Our office monitors and maintains the tip line. We make sure the schools are getting the tips when they come in. We update that. We're able to assist by providing any of the schools with, law enforcement agency contacts, any of those three-letter, federal agencies that they may need, FBI, ATF, any of that, and then just provide any type of assistance and kind of be that liaison between the schools, the law enforcement, anything that they may need. We're also able to work with other fusion centers throughout the state to find out what trends are going on, what states are seeing other types of threats that we may need to share with our Kentucky partners to let them know that this is what's going on across the nation.
Okay, you had to unmute me here. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Let's get a little bit more into the details here. One of the things that we think about in school safety, we look at it from an all hazards approach. What else can happen to schools, during the school day? As was mentioned in your opening paragraph of your report here, you indicate, like we all know, that the actual number of shootings that take place in the United States sounds like it's many all over the state, or all over the country, excuse me. But that actually constitutes 0.1% of what goes on the over 100,000 schools we have in the country. But we don't discount what's happened down at Marshall. We don't discount what's happened at Heath High School. We don't discount what's happened at East Carter High School in our own state here. We don't discount those things, but we look at things from an all hazards approach. For example, things that concern me is bullying. The state information that we get from KDE states that we have 5 instances of bullying every minute in our state. Now, I'll repeat that again, 5 instances of bullying every minute in our state. And somehow that doesn't get it out on the front page of newspapers, but a school shooting does. Something else that is just, and you all know this as well as I do, vaping is going crazy in our state. And we're having kids that are falling out of their desks high. We don't know what's going on. They're on some kind of a Juul or vaping tool and are having problems with that. Principals are just, trying to get technologies in there called Halo, which are able to, find out a little bit more about the vaping, whatever. Mental health, obviously pre-COVID and post-COVID, has been on our radar screen big time. And that's one of the reasons why when we developed Senate Bill 1, the School Safety Resiliency Act, that we split it basically in half dealing with school safety issues and the other half dealing with mental health issues. And so that's on our radar screen as well. And probably one other thing, and I could just go down the whole laundry list here, but these are the top 4 or 5 things that really are being told to us by school officials and kids and whatever. They have 1 or 2 individuals that disrupt the entire day in a classroom or in a school. And those disruptive students, because many of them don't have a place to go to, they're kept in the classrooms, and principals and teachers are very frustrated with that. We've had some legislation that spoke about that a little bit later. I think someone's going to be talking about that. But let's get into talk just a little bit more. Jennifer, you and I will tag team on the tip line here. We started a tip line. When I say we, the Kentucky Center for School Safety started a tip line. This was probably 10 years ago, and it was just email based. And we were basically the post office. The email would come in to us, and we would send it on over to the schools. When Senate Bill 1 was passed, it required us to have a multi-platform tip line, which included, emails, text messages, and telephone calls or voice. And so on my board of directors that are all appointed by the governor, one of them is the commissioner of the Homeland Security Office. And so we got with those individuals there, and they said, John, we have the technology right here in Kentucky, right here in our office at Homeland Security. Let us help you get this tip line going. So we did that. We were able to start this program basically 4 years ago. And let me tell you, I'm networked in with state directors of school safety all over the country. Over in Colorado, they have one of the best tip lines going on. It's called Safe to Tell. It's a wonderful program. When I talked with Christy Harms, who's my counterpart in Colorado, and I was telling her how we're starting ours, she said, John, you're going to go through growing pains just like we did. We started off small, and we eventually grew up as far as to where they are today. So they have 15 years of experience on us when it comes to tip lines are concerned. And we have met with her and talked with her about things that we can do to make our tip lines a little bit better. And so Jennifer, let me kick it over to you so you can tell them about what you're doing and what we're doing. And let me add a couple of quick other things here too. When we brought the tip line up, I wanted to advertise it out. And so I sent out 25,000 posters around the state of Kentucky to our schools. 20 went to each high school, 15 went to each middle school, and 10 went to each elementary school. And they were supposed to be posted all around. And every district that uses our tip line, which is about, I think, 160 school districts, they have that Stop Tip Line logo. It's a little round thing that's on their web page, on their district's web pages, and it's on the school's web pages. And then we still wanted to, even advertise a little bit more. So we created a video for elementary kids on how to use the tip line. And then we also had a video for the secondary students as well. So those have been pushed out. So those have been our efforts to try to get this information out to you all. We have some more ideas, and I like your ideas about using the pamphlets, sending them out. And so we're going to be springboarding from that. So now, Jennifer, I'll shut up and let you talk a little bit more about our tip line.
Okay, so I read through what you all done with the report, and I agree completely. A lot of our schools are utilizing the Stop Tip Line, but the students aren't aware of it. And that falls on, us and the school for not promoting that a little bit more. So my goal is this summer is to get this promotional stuff out there. We're currently working on an app that will be on the App Store and the Google Play Store that's going to be downloaded for free that will take students directly to the Safe Schools reporting system. I'm hoping that'll get out in the next week or two. We've had some pushback from Apple that we're trying to work through. My goal is to just get this information out there. And I agree with you all. Students need to be aware that it's out there. Schools need to promote it a little bit more, and we need to get that information out there so that way they know it's available and know how to use it. The videos that John's talking about are great. They show students step by step. This is what it's like to report. This is what you can report on. And it kind of walks them through and takes away some of that fear that they may be feeling when it's, it may be a little overwhelming the first time they have to submit a tip. Another thing that we have is, I know, your report talks a lot about concerning behavior, which is extremely important. We also have a 20-minute video that we can provide to any school, any district, that students can watch that talks about concerning behavior. And it's done from the perspective of a school resource officer talking to students. It talks about concerning behavior, it talks about targeted violence and terrorism, and then it talks about who to report to. So all of this information, we're going to try to push it out and get it to as many people as possible so that they know it's out there.
Jennifer, talk a little bit about 988.
So we've added 988, which is the, I'm sure you all know, it's the National Mental Health Crisis Hotline. We've added that to the tip line. So it's available. If you go to our tip line and you're wanting to submit a tip, it'll ask if you're, are you in a crisis situation at this time? Do you need to speak to someone? And it'll direct them directly to 988. So that way they're automatically connected with a mental health professional. We've added that to our app. Once it's developed, that link will be on there. So that way, if they need to talk to somebody, with mental health training, they can automatically get in touch with them as well.
And the takeaway that we have on this, obviously, is we're going to use your suggestion and develop a pamphlet. Jennifer and I were talking about that yesterday, that they're going to develop a pamphlet and we'll get those things printed out and get those out to the schools as best we can this summer so they can be distributed out there. We're also talking about the possibility of getting magnets that can be put up on the refrigerators at home. I'm going to work through the state office of PTAs and see if we can't get that through the parents. We're going to give them the magnets, and then maybe when they have open houses, when you have huge numbers of parents that come to school to see their kids' teachers and things like that, that might be a good time. I'm kind of hesitant to give magnets to kids to take home because they might end up on the school bus, out the windows, or someplace else like that. So we're going to try to get them to the parents so that they can put them up on their refrigerators and so that they would be something that would be easily seen. Something else I'd like to get into, when you talk about lockdown drills, let's talk about that for just a few minutes. And again, I appreciate your comments on that from the national level. I want to tell you what we've been doing in Kentucky. As you bring up in your report, you talk about the American Federation of Teachers and NEA. About 3 years ago, they sent out a white paper that both those organizations co-authored that talked about lockdown drills being traumatizing students and particularly elementary kids as well. And so let me tell you what we do in Kentucky. Well, first of all lockdown drills are to be announced. There's not to be any surprise attacks here, so to speak, because if you have an unannounced lockdown drill, kids won't know if it's a drill or not, and they start texting their parents, and the parents come to school, and it's a mess. And so we certainly advertise the lockdown drills like you suggest here. We don't do it exactly how you all suggest, where it's kind of, we're going to have it on a day, but you don't know when it's going to happen during that day. We try to develop what we call situational awareness. And let me give you an example of what we're talking about here. Shootings don't take place during second hour class. They take place before school, during lunch, during transition or class period changes, or after school. And so why did they do that? They have multiple targets there. They're shooting down at Marshall County. 600 kids were in that area when the shooting took place like that. So we're trying to teach kids a little bit more about, hey, think about what your options are, the run and the hide ideas on these things. For example, down at Corbin High School, John Crawford, who was principal down there, did something very unusual. If you looked at their cafeteria at Corbin High School, you would see that it sits as what I call the concourse area of the gymnasium. You've got the gym on the left, you got the concourse area where everybody kind of gathers for concessions and stuff. They set that up as their cafeteria during the day, and the food lines are way over behind the kitchen over on the right-hand side. They have hallways that go down this way and hallways that go this way. So John walked into his first hour lunch and got on the bullhorn and he said, "Hey kids, give me your attention." And they did like what the principal's doing here. He's calling us attention in the cafeteria. He said, if I was a shooter, what would you do? And he caught the kids by, surprise. Well, I guess I'd hunt underneath the table here. Well, we've learned from Columbine that you don't do that. He says, we try to teach you how to know your options. So those of you sitting over here, where would you go? And they said, well, the gymnasium doors are over here. I think we'd scoot out there. How about you over here? Where would you go? Well, we go over to the kitchen area. How about you guys? Down that hallway, these kids down this hallway. He said, okay, on my mark, walk out here. Now, don't run over one another, but walk out of this place. See how quickly you can get out of here. So they did that. That was their drill. Shootings sometimes take place like, at Columbine during the cafeteria time. And so when the kids came back in, by the way, they evacuated that cafeteria in 9 seconds. So that's the run portion of what we consider as far as active shooters concerned. So when he brought the kids back, he said, now I want to tell you something. Keep this in mind no matter where you go. For example, when you go to church, and it's sad to say, know where your options are, because we've had church shootings. In fact, we've had more church shootings than we've had school shootings, which is a sad, sad commentary about our society today. Or when you go to a concert, you know that story. Or when you go to the theaters, when you go to the malls, those are all areas where they've had shootings, and we want you all to be aware of your options when you come into that. So we've segued from let's do lockdown drills in the classroom and you go over to the side to let's open this up a little bit more and look at how we can do this. Now, as far as elementary kids are concerned, when we saw that report coming in from NEA and AFT, we got together 3 years ago with elementary teachers, elementary principals, school psychologists, SROs, anyone that deal with elementary kids. They said, we've got to find a way to do this different for these kids so we're not scaring the bejesus out of them. And so they came up with a really good curriculum, which sits on our website, by the way, and I can certainly send it to you all for your all perusal. But now the elementary teachers are doing things, they're not called drills, they're called safety practices. That has a different ring to it. And it may not be there's a shooter in the building, but there might be a dog that's loose in the building, and we don't want the doggy to see us. So they move the kids over to the wall, they cover the door, window, and they get real quiet. The teacher reads to them. So they find ways to deal with the social, emotional side of these kids when it comes to drills. And so we also have published, and we did this in cooperation with KDE, a listing of what we call planning discussion points for lockdowns. Now we have some that, and it's 3 pages thick. So these are topics that the school officials, along with their first responders, need to talk a little bit more about when they develop their own lockdown procedures. And so we feel like we want to get as much information as we can. And let me talk to you real quickly about reunification. We do not recommend telling the parents prior to a shooting where the reunification site's going to be. Why? Because the bad guy might know it. And we don't want the bad guy waiting out there to get a whole bunch of kids coming off of buses and shoot them there. So we do not advertise that. We tell the parents that when a shooting has occurred, or maybe even a gas leak or whatever the case may be, where we need to transport kids from point A to point B, we basically tell them, you check with this radio program, or you check with our website, or there's all kinds of ways that we can get information to parents. Get on your social media and stuff like that. We'll tell you where to meet your kids during that day. We won't tell you that prior to that, again, because current trends say, don't advertise those things. So I'm running out of gas to talk about, but let's kick it over here to Ben, and he will talk to you what SRO officers are doing. And I got to tell you, being a principal all those years I did up in Fayette County, I had school resource officers that were working with us, and they were part of my faculty. They weren't an outpost, number one. Plus, those ladies and gentlemen basically were another adult that the kids could go to in time of need as well. So they were role models and they were mentors. Then if the law was broken, then we'd have to bring in the cop thing on the thing. But 90% of the time, it's relationship building. And this guy here was a former SRO. So take it away, Ben.
Tony, do you have my presentation?
We do. Okay. There it is.
All right, if you could pop that up for me. And John's right, I'm a former SRO. I was a deputy sheriff in Montgomery County in 1999 when Columbine happened. And I was placed in a school, Montgomery County High School. I actually had the high school, middle school, and pre-elementary schools. I actually had hair when I started that job. After I was doing 5 schools and running around, I lost that, and they got me another school resource officer to help me out. Looks like I have someone raising their hand.
Yes, that's John and Ben, this is Mandy Perez. She is our 2023 Kentucky Teacher of the Year. She is a member of the communications staff while she works on her sabbatical this year at the Department of Ed, and she is from Crittenden County.
Okay.
Mandy, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Hello. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just have a quick question about the reunification center. So do you recommend telling the students where the reunification center is located?
No, because that information.
not-
would leak out. Yeah, that information would leak out. And so what we want to do is we want to secure that reunification center before anybody gets there, number one. And we don't want to have anybody there to beat us there because we want to have an orderly way to flow the parents in and out. If we announce where these reunification sites are, parents will beat us there. We can't get buses in and things like this. So it gets to be a real logistical issue. So we like to get the kids over to the reunification center and set up what we call a gate system, a gatekeeper system, where we can, carefully release kids to their parents and to their relatives that would be picking them up. So we don't want to advertise that at all.
So what do you recommend schools do then? Like if a student is getting separated from the teacher or the class and they have like a plan or a place to go, does the school need to come up with like another place to go for safety?
Oh, I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to say here. Once we, and Ben will talk about this in a minute, once that shooter has been neutralized and we move the kids out of the classrooms, put them on buses and move them out. I think you're talking about during the shooting, what do you do? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's different. That's a different strategy. I'm talking about after the shooter has been neutralized and we move the kids off campus and take them to another spot to be picked up. So you're talking about, what about the children that are, that might get stuck out in the hallways when when everything else either locked down or they couldn't run out, and particularly with elementary kids, right?
Well, I'm middle school. I'm just saying if it's going down and the kids are, like kind of like in Marshall County, they all just kind of ran towards McDonald's and they all, went to town. Like, should we give them a location to go to?
That should be a plan that you talk to with your students. For example, we just did active shooter videos at Madison Southern High School yesterday. We're redoing the video for teachers, the teacher video that's required by law. And, we asked the kids, okay, if you're outside and a shooter comes in, where are you going? And a lot of them said, we don't know. Well, we talked about, okay, if you're in this spot, go here. If you're in this spot, go here. You have safe places around your school. You have safe locations. Those are the things that need to be talked about with your students. If we have a brand new teacher and they're out in the outside or in the playground, and there's an active shooter situation, in a stressful situation, they may think, well, the best thing to do is go back into school. Well, if the active shooter is in the school, that's the last place you want to be. So what's your plan there? Where am I going to go? If there's a threat in the school, where I need to be? So to answer your question, yes, this definitely does need to be discussed with your students, and they need to know. So if I'm in the front of the building, where am I going? Am I going to that bank? Am I going to the church that's in front of the school? Am I, if I'm running, I don't want to run in front of the school. I want to run away from the school. So yes, there is that. It definitely needs to be discussed with your students.
Okay. Thank you.
But reunification sites have changed throughout the years. At one time, the reunification site was, well, if there was something happening in the school, we go to the football field. Well, that needs to change because you're not getting far away enough for threats. So if your reunification site may be a large church, it may be another location that belongs to the county or something of that nature. And before those kids go, you have to have law enforcement respond to that area and clear that area to make sure it's safe to bus those kids in. So there's a lot of planning that goes along with that. And that kind of is what the School Safety and Resiliency Act is a requirement of the local law enforcement, first responders. And it doesn't say it's law enforcement, it's first responders have to work with the schools on all of those plans on who's going to do what. It may be your volunteer firemen that are coming in and stopping traffic so you can get to a reunification site, or blocking things off and moving the media over to another location. It's all things that definitely have to be very well planned, because when something does happen, you know what plans happen to plans. They fall apart unless you practice them and know them, if that answers your question.
And we have
Yes,
training
thank you.
that will help out with people, school districts, when they want to plan out their reunification program. We have a model program that came out of Pulaski County that I think is really great. Ben?
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about our SRO training, and I also want to talk about the training that officers receive that aren't SROs. If you click to the next slide, Ms. Tony, I just really want to go over what was actually in the School Safety and Resiliency Act. The first draft of the School Safety and Resiliency Act called for an SRO in every school. It was changed by SB 8, which was the cleanup bill the next year, to every campus. The reason is that you have several schools that have 3 schools under one roof. By law, they would be required to have 3 SROs, where you may have a large school that has 3 times as many students, and they're only required 1. So to make that burden go away for those smaller districts to hire so many SROs, was changed to campus. One of the biggest things is your SRO should not be responsible at all for any discipline. And by law, they're not allowed to be involved in discipline. The last place the student should go for discipline is your SRO. Your SRO is that trusted adult that's also your protector. We like to look at more of an informal, I don't want to say mental health professional, that's going a little far, but an informal counselor. And I think a lot of school districts are using that SRO as that, and it's very important. We'll kind of go over some of the training we do with that. Now, by law, every SRO in the state, to be a SRO, has to have 120 hours worth of certification, which means that they take 40 hours each year for 3 years to get that 120-hour certification. The reason that is because every police officer in the state of Kentucky is required to have 40 hours of training every year. So we've split it up so they do 40 hours their first year, 40 hours their second year, 40 hours their third year. And Tony, if you can kind of click to the next page, please. Now, we're really good at being police officers. Talking about the report that you all did, I just want to ease your mind a little bit. That's my whole point of talking to you. We started active shooter training right after Columbine here at the Department of Criminal Justice Training. In 2000 is when our first active shooter training was started, and that was a 40-hour course that officers could come to. So for the past 23 years, we've been training active shooter. Now, the training has evolved over the years. When we first started in 2000, there was a desire that when there was an active shooter, you showed up on scene and you waited for another officer before you went in. In the last 20 years, that has evolved to when an officer, if there is shooting in the school, they go directly to that threat. Now, I don't know if you watched any of the video or the body cam fed footage of Nashville. It's hard to watch. As police officers, I wanted to watch it to see what was done right, what was done wrong. And that is what we train here in the state of Kentucky. If you watch it, the officers made entry in the building. At first, they did not hear gunfire. So they started searching. As soon as they heard gunfire, they ran towards the threat. It's hard to talk about right now because we've got a Louisville officer that's fighting for his life, but that's exactly what that officer did yesterday. Within 3 minutes, ran in towards the shooting. That's ingrained training in our officers in the state of Kentucky. They have the initiative, they go for that initiative. I know this because I trained active shooter for 10 years when I was in the firearms section here at DOCJT, and that's what we ingrained into our officers. I hope that makes you feel better, that knowing that that's what the training we have for our officers, because that's what they do. And I know they do it because we've actually done stimulation training where we shoot back at the officers, and I was a bad guy. And let me tell you, I got beat up pretty bad with stimulation rounds because they charged towards the shooter, and that's what they're supposed to do. The way we look at it in law enforcement is if that shooter is shooting at us, that means they're not shooting at kids, and that's what we're going for. Obviously, we don't want to get shot, but our job is to go save you all, and that's what the job of your SRO is. 99.9% of your time, your SRO is walking to school, working as a counselor for you folks, working with you with stuff that's going on at home, investigating things that need to be investigated. But basically, we call it, you have to be that way, and then you have to be the tip of the spear when something happens at your school. And that's why they're armed. They have to be. If someone's coming in with a gun, the only way to fight that's with another gun and with someone that's there to protect. Now, some of the things that were required by our SRO training, you'll see up on the board. It's actually in legislation. And its foundations of police law enforcement or school-based law enforcement, threat assessment and response. This is where we want our officers to be proactive. We're not just sitting around waiting for something bad to happen. You know, they're there to look and watch students and see if there's issues with students that maybe they can assist with, so we're not getting to the point where someone's walking with a gun. Youth and drug abuse, that changes. The curriculum changes every month, it seems like. social media and cybersecurity, SROs as teachers and mentors. I found my love for teaching being an SRO. I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't know I wanted to come to the academy and be an instructor until I became an SRO. Youth mental health and awareness. Ms. Bushelman, that's on this, you just talked to earlier today, is helping out immensely with our training. She's providing mental health professionals from around the state. You know, I had a legislator ask me once, said, was it a good idea to have cops teach other cops mental health awareness? I said, no, that's why we use mental health professionals to train our police officers. When we first started the training, we brought SROs in, and this is why we like to listen to folks. We brought our SROs in and we said, okay, what training do you want for SRO 2? You had SRO 1. And they looked at us and said, we're really good at being cops. We're not the best at being mentors and counselors. We need to know how to do that. And so we put more of that into our next training. And we think that that's very, very comprehensive and that's very, very important. Diversity and awareness training, trauma-informed action, understanding student with special needs. You know, we have my wife's a counselor, and she's actually works with all counselors in Madison County, and she has an open dialogue with our SROs. Or it says, okay, if you run into issues, what are your issues and how can we help you? We have SROs calling her all the time saying, well, I'm working with a student, but now he's not talking to me today. What do I do? And my wife said, that's kids. Stay on them. You know, and 3 days later, they're calling back saying it's working. So we want that dialogue between our SROs and our teachers and mental health professionals. And of course, de-escalation strategies, which is always ever evolving. You could go to another slide, please, ma'am. Now, House Bill 63 requires that there's an SRO on every campus in the state of Kentucky. If the school system does not have an SRO, they have to send basically a letter to me saying why. And we take a note on, is it funding or is it personnel? And there seems to be a mix of both. A lot of schools have the money to have SROs, they're just not finding the personnel. And a lot of school districts just don't have the money. So we're hoping that legislation down the line will provide more funding, and maybe more funding give us the opportunity to get more folks into the schools. Now, I will say, House Bill 63 was passed last year. We had an increase of 200 SROs, over 200 SROs since the passing of House Bill 63. So we're getting SROs into the building. It's a slow process. It's actually going quicker than I thought it would, so I'm tickled with that. But we also have to get our mental health professionals in as well, because that is something that the law requires. And I think your best team is your SRO and your mental health professional within your school, because they can really work as a great team. I go to the next slide, please. And the next slide, you don't need to see my ugly mug. Oh, okay. Did you all get the schedules on SRO training?
Yes, yes, pulling it up. Would you like the one, the first one?
That's fine. And actually, I don't want to take up too much time. Don't pull it up. I'll just talk about it. So you've heard me talk a lot about mental health professionals. You've heard me talk a lot about how we're training our police officers to get to that point where they can be that good counselor, they can be that good mentor for students. In your report, you talked about response. We've had active shooter response in our basic training academy for over 15 years, which means every police officer that's graduated from the OCJT, Lexington Police Department, Louisville Metro, KSP has had active shooter training. We continue to have active shooter training, and everybody in the state's following the same rules. You go towards the shooter. You keep your initiative, and that's what your job is. That's why you've got a vest. That's why you've got a gun. That's what you do. You're going to save those kids. I will tell you this, as an SRO, it takes on a much bigger responsibility as an officer, because that SRO, you all become my kids. I had 5,000 kids in Madison County. That's what I felt like. And I wasn't even a dad at that time, but I felt like I had that. That's really why we train so hard and how we train. Now, talking about how we train our staff, by law, our office has to put out an active shooter video for all staffs, all school staff to watch, not just teachers, administrators, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, janitors. Everybody has to watch that video. We just updated yesterday. We were doing some filming on doing some updates for that. Now, you're not going to learn everything there is to know about active shooter in an hour. What we want is that staff to watch that together and talk about what the plan is. And that's not just for active shooters, that's for anything. What is the plan? And so I challenge you as students, and you have other students that you talk to and work with and go to school with, to ask your teacher, what is our plan? If we're sitting in this room and something happens, what is our plan? Well, we know the door is already locked. We're going to a blind corner. What if I walk down the hallway? What do I need to do? What is the plan? You know, if you have someone with special needs in your room, that's going to be different. How am I going to assist my teacher in helping that student with special needs? That's what that is all about. The staff is required to watch that video every year before school starts. And so if you really want to help out, and I know you all do, this first day of school, ask your teachers, did you watch that active shooter video, that bald-headed guy we had in the meeting, you know, said we were supposed to? Okay, what's our plan? I know this because yesterday when we were talking to these students that we were filming, I said, what are your plans? What are you going to do? And they said, well, we know what to do inside the room, but we don't know what to do outside the room. Well, guess what they were practicing yesterday when we left? Where to go, what to do. And that there's a comfort level to that, knowing that if something happens, you know what to do. And if you practice it, it will come back to you in a stressful situation. So at this point, I don't want to take up too much more time, but if you have questions about what our training is, what we do here at DOCJT, what we do across the state, please let me know. If you don't want to ask now, you can find me on the website. Go to DOCJT's website, just Google DOCJT, go to compliance. You can pull up our website, stop tip lines there, our active shooter videos there for teachers. We have handle with care program videos there. You can see who your compliance officer is for your school. And if you have questions, we're here to answer and hopefully be a resource for you and for your school.
As you're typing in the questions in your chat room there, let me expand just a little bit more that if, God forbid, we should have another school shooting, what takes place immediately? And so what happens is it's a twofold approach. Number one, obviously, law enforcement goes in there immediately and takes care of that. Now, once they get the kids out, get to the reunification center, what happens? Well, it comes to me, and I have a response sheet that I would send out to the principal right away. It's a response sheet that tells them certain things that they should do immediately in that school once the kids are out. And that's on our website, by the way. But for example, and this sounds kind of, what's the word I want to say, uncomfortable, but we learned from Marshall County that you don't want the custodians to clean up the area where the children have died. You get an outside janitorial service to come in and get that. Immediately you shut down your school system's websites. You immediately get into getting some counselors in here. And this is where we get into our partnership with KDE. The Center for School Safety goes after the hardcore stuff immediately. Then we get in partnership with the Department of Education and they vet out who's going to come in and do the counseling. We learned from Marshall County that all kinds of well-meaning people came in there to do counseling, church people. We had people from different other agencies that were not school counselors coming in there, and they hit it in there. Now KDE lessons learned will be the vetter, if you will, VETTER, of who goes into the school when something like this happens. They will be the monitors to be sure that the people that are going to come in and work with the kids actually know what they're doing in the school environment. Just because you are a psychiatrist or psychologist, you may not have the wherewithal on how to work with children inside a school setting like that. And so that's what we do there. If something like that happens, law enforcement takes care of the shooter. Center for School Safety sets up the school to be ready to re-enter kids back in there several days later. And KDE deals with the mental health side of this thing. And it's a great partnership that we have with our friends at the Department of Education.
Right.
Okay, any questions for Ben or me?
Students, do you have any questions for Ben or John or Jennifer? I know I saw some of you put some ideas about the tip line in the chat. Go ahead and feel free to raise your hand or add in some questions. Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to put my email in the chat. And if any of the students, anyone on here wants to shoot an idea over and say, hey, I just thought of this, this might be something good to share, or this is a problem that we're seeing in our school with the tip line or anything. If you'll send that information to me, then we'll try to address it. And I appreciate everything that everyone has done on this report and some of the ideas that you provided us with. I really appreciate you all taking the time to do that.
Jennifer, and I think John had mentioned this to me in a previous conversation, the talk about QR codes and putting in places that are maybe not as where somebody sees a kid going up into the hallway to scan a QR code or things like that. Are there discussions on placement of where the QR codes may be, or are you looking for feedback on that as well?
Yeah, I think our goal is to reach out to the schools and the districts and say, hey, we'll send you extra stop. I'll send as many stop tip line posters as the school asks for, but we'll send those posters and they can put them in the bathrooms. They can put them in the locker rooms. They can put them in places that maybe kids can scan that QR code real quick, get that information, and not be seen by anyone. And we've also talked about trying to reach out to some of our local community partners to say, hey, can we put these in, your park and recs bathrooms? Can we put them on your park and recs pavilions? Can we get these posters out in the community so that kids can see them outside of school as well and know that it doesn't have to just be something that they can, respond to that's going on at the school right now. It could be something they've got going on at home that they need to report on, or something. We've had community members that have reported and said, hey, I saw a student that was at a park and this was occurring and I just wanted to report it to somebody. So it's not just school only. We want tips to come in that relate to all sorts of things that could affect our students.
Yeah, and if I could dovetail on that just a few minutes there. If there was a research stat, I'm trying to think, it was from the American Psychological Association, this was several years ago, that for every one school shooting that has happened, there were 25 that were averted because kids broke the code of silence. And something that you mentioned in your report here is that shooters sometimes advertise, we use the word leak information out before they actually do the shooting. And if you look at the shooting we had down at McCracken County back in 1997, there were bystanders that heard the shooter talk about going to do something the next day. And what they were, what they told us later on, they said, well, we never thought he was serious about that. So what we want to do from Jennifer's standpoint, that if you hear something or see something, say something. I know that sounds so cliche or whatever, but it's the honest to goodness truth here is that you're the eyes and ears students in the hallways that us, faculty members can't hear and see and stuff like that. You know more about this stuff going on than we do. That's why we got that tip line out there. And the tip line today won't look at a thing like it does 5 years from now because it'll be much, much better. We're growing with this thing. So that's one thing. And then I want to ask Ben to talk about something because I know we basically have secondary students here. And I want Ben to talk about a program called Handle with Care real quick that I think you need to know about. Ben?
Yeah, real quick. Well, and first of all, before I get started, my bald head is up on the screen right now with my email and my phone number to my office. So if you need that, use that, please. What'll happen is if you've got something going on at your school, we've got compliance officers assigned to your school. So we'll send that compliance officer to your school if there's an issue or something that we can do to assist. The Handle with Care program was started in West Virginia. And the way it's set up is that if an officer that's working the road sees a child that's had some traumas and goes to a call, there's been a domestic violence incident or something of that nature, there's an ability for that officer to contact the school via a system that we have in our KYOP system, which is the computers that you see in police officers' cars. When they come back from that call, they can input that child's name, their school, their age, and that goes to the school. So the school gets a heads up that something has happened the day before. Now, you can't get a whole lot of information because of privacy laws, but at least what they'll know is that something's happened, and if that child's come in and is acting up, if the child comes in and is wearing the same clothes that they were wearing the day before, issues of that nature, the school can focus their resources to that student. Now, we're not allowed to run up and go, what happened last night? But you know as well as I do that if someone shows you some compassion or shows compassion to or tries to take care of you a little bit more, it's a lot easier to expel what the situation was not before. When I was at SRO, I had students come into my office all the time that maybe had a situation the night before with law enforcement. They could come talk to me and say, what happened? What's going to happen? What's going on? I know I can trust you. And that's what we're working towards, is that trusted adult, that student go talk to a trusted adult, either be, like I said, an SRO or a janitor or a bus driver, whatever. You just have to have that trusted adult, and that's what they're there in school for. So the Handle with Care program is all the way across the state. Every officer in the state has the ability to access that program, and it's a phenomenal program. We're getting it out, and my daughters and I were involved in a vehicle accident in the fall. Handle with Care notification went out. The officer put a Handle with Care notification because we were involved in an accident, and I was taking my kids back home to school after everybody was checked out, and the school knew, hey, these kids are walking in that might have had some trauma. We're going to take a watch for them.
That's wonderful. And I'll just kind of put the ribbon on this for you, Tony, from our standpoint here, and just say, again, I want to echo what I said earlier. I'm so impressed with this report that you all have done. You did your due diligence on this. It's very well written, very well thought through, very well researched. So I want to say, as a principal, slant bar teacher, you did a good job. Very, very proud of you on that. But I'm also very proud of the fact that you're looking at school safety through your lenses. And like Ben was saying, we want you to be able to communicate that information that you feel with your principals and with your teachers and your counselors, et cetera, to get things better in your school day by day. And again, I'd like to say to you that just like Ben, though I don't have my picture up there or things like that, but I think we could Photoshop a picture for me up there. But Tony, if you could give them my contact information, I'll be very happy to respond to them anytime they want to get in contact with us to talk more about what we offer as far as the Kentucky Center for School Safety. We do have a shop down at Murray State University that runs our website. We get hit anywhere between 8,000 to 15,000 times per day. So it's a very active website. It's probably the most active website for Center for School Safety in the country. So I've been told by our friends in Washington. But take a peek at that and see some of the things that we've got going on there. I think you might be impressed. But thank you so much for the opportunity to share our side of the story with you on school safety so we can continue our partnership with the Department of Education.
Well, we appreciate you guys being here, and we will, in our exit slip, provide all the information, and we'll ask them for some additional feedback, and I'll be happy to share that feedback with you. In addition, I know you all had possibly discussed the idea of doing some sort of an advisory council with high school students or middle school students, and I know several of the students on this council would probably be interested in that, and we'd be happy to help you in any way with that partnership. So just let us know how we can help you and just further student voice in this issue. We really appreciate that, and we appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. All right. Our next item is actually still kind of talking about the school safety reports and the projects that you've worked on, and also taking a look into the future. So I'll introduce, obviously, you all know Dr. Brewer and Dr. Grider-Jones are going to toss over to them. Hopefully they're on. I think I saw Dr. Jones and Dr. Brewer.
Yes, Tony, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. All right, take it away, ladies.
Dr. Grider-Jones, would you like to start? We'll sort of journey from past to present to future chronologically.
Sure. I don't have a whole lot to share. I just wanted to take the opportunity to, one, echo the comments earlier about the work you all have done this year and the work of previous councils, as this Student Advisory Council has continued to really focus and develop a project, thinking about ways we can continue to help you share your message and your report and the work you've been doing. And so as we start to think about, for example, we've posted your report on the KDE website, so that's available. But thinking about opportunities for you all to continue to present the work you've done. You obviously did a wonderful presentation in January when we were at KDE. And there's an opportunity today for the Kentucky Board of Education meeting as well to present that school safety. But I just wanted to brainstorm a few ideas with you and encourage you all to think about opportunities for you to continue to showcase and highlight the work in the report, just even the process you've been doing on this project. So just this is an opportunity to take a few moments. I'll ask you to share in the chat or to share out, raise your hand or just share out where opportunities that you might be able to continue to share. In this particular case, this focus on school safety, last year's council had a real focus on mental health, and there were several opportunities there. So those who were involved in those presentations might think of some opportunities to showcase those reports and focus out. So just a few moments here. I see Tony's mentioned in the chat. Perhaps you can present your report and the process to your local school boards. But what are other opportunities for you all to showcase and share this report? So I'll just take a few moments. But really, where does it make sense for you to share to your peers, to your community?
Some additional ideas I know that we've looked at, and we'll get to Peter in a minute, is just, during some of our, we call them the K groups. So like KSBA or KASS is the School Boards Association, the Superintendent's Association, and then Association for School Administrators. A lot of them have big summer conferences, and they're looking for agenda items or people to present. So I think those are opportunities. There's also some conferences in the fall and the winter. I know that the CTE showcase that KSBA just had in February, they had some presentations from students, was an extremely big hit. They really love to have kids present and showcase their abilities and their work. So those I think are some ideas. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you. I think the larger conferences were falling right into what I was thinking about, but on a little bit of a smaller scale. I honestly think that presentations or just meetings with school administrators at the very school level or county level could be successful, just because that allows us to implement things all the way down to the roots of the education tree.
Great idea.
Great idea.
Are you thinking like just school district related, or possibly even like city council, mayor, county judge executives? Like what are your thoughts on that? Who would you ideally like to reach out to?
I think ideally I would reach out to local boards and city government. County boards would work too, but I think the main core would be that we were working to bring this report to people who are close and in our community, so that we can bring it directly to them rather than having it filter.
All right, Anastasia, I think you have your hand up.
Yes. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, cool. So a few years ago, my first year, we did an equity project that is a little bit of a different circumstance than the school safety one, but due to COVID, we used social media a lot. And even though it's like harder to talk about school safety and that on like Instagram and Facebook and all that, I think short little videos about like how we can support kids and show support for schools that have experienced losses and school shootings. I think that's a good way, especially since a lot of society today is based on the internet and web access.
I like that idea. You all did that was a great example of how you all work together virtually, since we were not in school during that time, and we're able to work on a project. It's a great project, and very proud of everything. I can't believe you're going to graduate, because I remember you were a sophomore at that time, and it really makes me feel old, but also very, very proud of all the work that you guys have done. So that was a great example of perhaps a social media campaign, and maybe that's something you all tend to be, I don't want to use the word actors, but you all have done great on the videos that we've asked you to do. And so that might be something to think about too, short little videos.
Well, and for those, sorry, but for those that weren't on the council when we did this or haven't seen it, we just did short little videos where we had people like explaining like what equity means to them and that kind of stuff, and we pieced it together to make like a 2-minute video for social media. So it could be as simple as that, and we all just put it together, or we could film it all together at some point. It's not really a hard thing to do. It's just coming up with a concept and following through with it.
I like that idea. Yeah. Right, Rima?
I personally think like focusing on like individual counties, just because like Kentucky, we have so many counties and it's gonna be kind of hard to get like an entire like state on board. So I just feel like the local impact, because these like decisions are made like on the school board level for each county and like how to operate that. So just like doing local presentations there, like maybe with like city governments, but I also like think what Anastasia was saying, like social media attention and just like public support gets people talking about it. Just like outside of the people making these decisions, because if more people are talking about it, then it's like more likely that like change would occur.
Good point. Very good point. And just to add to that, you all have been doing a great job with media. I think that's also a really great opportunity for you all to share the work of the white paper and your views. And we've been fortunate to have a lot of media that have been interested in this project and what you guys have recommended. So I think continued exposure with that, and just a mode of gratitude to you all, because a lot of times it happens real quickly. You get a call that morning and they'd like to talk to a student, and you all have really been flexible and wonderful with promoting the work that you have done. So that's a big kudos to each of you all for that.
Thank you, everyone, for those suggestions and ideas. In the exit slip for today, we'll also invite you to share out other ideas, and for the any potential or possible opportunities as it relates to presentations, we'll continue to communicate with you all and share that out via email. So there might be some opportunities, for example, this summer there to present, or like Tony mentioned, maybe something in the fall, particularly a presentation on your school safety report. But think about other opportunities. We're happy to support, and we invite you to think about other ways for you to share your message and, again, your work. I will, because Mandy is on the call, I did want to take just a few moments before turning over to Dr. Brewer. I did want to invite Mandy Perez, who's on our call, our 2023 Kentucky Teacher of the Year, to share just a few moments about some work as it relates to the Student Council, the project that you all have done, and really just the work of the council for this past year that you all have been doing, and an opportunity she's been able to work and highlight with one of her peers, the State Teacher of the Year in Wyoming, I believe. So I'll hand it over just briefly to Mandy Perez.
Hey guys, so you basically stole my heart the first time that I sat in on your meeting in January, and I couldn't help myself when I went to California and met all the National Teacher of the Year winners, but to brag on Kentucky and our Student Council Advisory Committee. And so in doing so, I had several state winners ask me some questions about what it is that you all necessarily do. There was one state winner in particular who was talking about how he just struggled with getting a lot or anything accomplished really in his state with his voice alone. And he was struggling with basically how to get different ideas across and how to present them. And I was like, you know what you need? You need a student advisory council. That's what you need. And I was talking about the work that you all did, and I actually spoke about the report, the presentation that you all had just presented in January about school safety. And a couple of weeks later, after returning from California, I received an email that went to all the national winners across the United States. And it was talking about, it was from this teacher winner from Wyoming. And he said he had been researching student council advisories from different states. And it just so happened to be that Kentucky was basically the only one he could find. And he had linked our state's link to our website that focuses on all the work that you're doing, your past meetings, your past recordings, your past presentations, the list of roster of who you guys are. And he emailed me and he was like, okay, apparently Kentucky is the front runner. These kiddos have it going on. Kentucky knows what they're doing. I can't find any other state that has anything like this. Can you help me? I was like, I mean, I'm not doing much for Kentucky, so yes, let's go Wyoming. Let's see what we can do. And I was like, yes. And so Glippy has helped me reach out to him, and he actually met with his state superintendent. They don't have a commissioner, they have a superintendent. And he made his proposal on April the 4th for Wyoming to have their very first superintendent student advisory council. And he said that she was very receptive. She loved the idea, and he is waiting to hear back from her about when it will be initiated for the state of Wyoming. And that is thanks to you all. So give yourselves a big pat on the back. You are leading the nation, guys, with the work that you're doing. It's incredible.
Thanks,
Be very
Mandy.
proud of yourselves.
Thanks, Mandy. Again, just showcasing sort of the ripple effect of the work you're doing and the input you all provide. So thank you all. I'll toss over to Dr. Brewer. Just wanted to say thanks to everyone for sharing your ideas. And as Mandy highlighted, really the work you're doing is making an impact.
All right. Well, on that very positive note, we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the next project that this group will embark on together. I know you have some time on your agenda today to celebrate the seniors who are graduating. And so that is very exciting. But as part of that sort of transition of the seniors going off to whatever comes next for them in a post-secondary space, we will be getting some new members to the committee or to the council. So we wanted to talk about kind of a potential topic to explore as well as a proposed timeline. We have had a couple conversations about some possible research topics and narrowed down to a set of 3. And I know that Dr. Greider-Jones sent out a poll. We sort of narrowed again to 2 options. And that was sent to the current members. Actually did not include the graduating seniors because we know you guys will be off on your next adventure. And based upon the results of that poll, it looks like the majority would like to focus on student voice, sort of exploring the different spaces that student voice has been highlighted in Kentucky, highlighting some examples of really important impact and success, and then making some recommendations about how student voice can be incorporated in other areas across the Commonwealth. So we'll kind of pause there and get your response to that as the proposed topic for our next policy exploration. Peter, go ahead.
Just a quick word of support. That sounds amazing to me. I think that's both a broad topic, but also one that we can narrow down into researchable chunks and that will benefit greatly from a student perspective. So that's a wonderful topic. I am 100% on.
Great, thanks, Peter. There's such a positive vibe to this meeting, Tony, in spite of not having any water. I am not sour, you will notice. Don't worry, I brought my own water. I'm not going to be boiling water. I brought bottled water, but I am here today. Well, thanks for that, Peter. Anyone else have any thoughts on the topic that's been proposed?
Even within the topic of, if there's an area that you would like to hone in on with student voice, like, we've done a lot of work at the state level with this, and just not just with us, but also the student voice team. So I do think, Kentucky really has become a leader when it comes to this, in addition with the student addition to the Kentucky Board of Education. really in the last couple of years. So I think that the sky is the limit with this. And if you guys, want to hone in on a certain area, whether it's, local or whatever, I think that there's really lots of opportunities out there to explore with this.
Absolutely. And as we just heard from Mandy, you guys are really the pace setters here. So Kentucky really is a model for the incorporation of student voice. So I think there will be a lot of wonderful exemplars to highlight. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline that we'd like to propose. So based on the timeline that we engaged in for the school safety brief, we are very aware that summers are a very busy time for all of our exceptional students. Many of you will be in Governor Scholars programs or other outstanding summer experiences. So that's not a wonderful time to really dig in and write, but it might be a good time for research, independent research, doing some reading, and kind of honing in on topics that you're interested in, really focusing on as we kind of move into the fall. So we would like to, number one, sort of unanimously identify this topic as the topic that we'll explore. It sounds like everyone is supportive of that. But then we will spend some time this summer doing research and reading and thinking about this topic. And so as I did with the school safety brief, I will communicate via email with you all, sort of how we identify high quality literature and sort of thinking about research questions and how we can go through and vet sources and make sure that we are focusing on the information that's going to be best suited for our policy exploration. And so I will send that out via email, and then we'll just communicate throughout the summer as your schedules permit. If you have questions, you can email Dr. Greider Jones or myself, and we'll start to sort of develop a set of resources. We'll probably use SharePoint or Google to sort of capture some of these documents in a folder so others can read about them as well. And so we'll just kind of work through the summer, sort of getting all of our information together. And then when we have our first meeting, either in August or September, we'll see how things are going. Google Scholar is a personal fave of Bentley's. Excellent, love that. So we will then, in the early fall, start to really identify what our research question is going to be and start heading in a direction of doing some drafting. So we'll identify kind of our big topics that we're going to focus on. We'll divide into groups like we did with the school safety brief, and then we'll start writing. I know you heard from me many, many, many times. The best way to start writing is to just start writing. So we will just start typing into those shared documents and see what comes together. So as we then work through the fall on developing a first draft, you'll have all of the support from us here at KDE to sort of think through those questions that I posed to you all as we were working through our last policy brief, thinking about our attributions, about whether or not recommendations would change the status quo, all of those things that I know you are very familiar with now. And we'll get to a final draft version. Just as we did previously, this will be very much a consensus-oriented project. So we will be sure to check in with all of the members throughout the process that everyone is comfortable with the direction that we're moving. Then ultimately, we'll get to a point where we will have our draft sent out for everyone to weigh in on as to whether or not it is ready to become our final version. We will then prep the final version, hopefully in early January, so that it is ready in line with the start of the next legislative session. And then we will start to present what we have pulled together. So that's the proposed timeline. Any questions or thoughts about that?
Just a little add-on in there, just because I know some of you might be wondering about new members to the Student Advisory Council. So we're in the zone right now, going through applications for the Advisory Council. I believe they are getting ready to be sent off to our judges, which will happen here in the next week or two. And we hope to conduct the interviews and everything by the end of this month, and then have them named in early May, as well as try to have them, obviously have them in place for our student advisory meeting at the end of May. As you know, the new student member on the Kentucky Board of Education will also have a seat on the advisory council. I feel like that's a real good addition and good opportunity for them to have. And I believe that we will know who that is in early June at the June Board of Education meeting. So a lot to look forward to with the advisory council, and you should be hearing within the next month who the new student advisory council members are, and we will invite them to come to the last meeting of the year, as well as this current council. And I'm also working with the commissioner scheduler to get a bunch of dates down. I think that I think I've got a good solid schedule for the entire school year on dates, so we'll try to get those on your calendars as well. It will include 3 in-person meetings, so opportunities there to come together and work on this project. There'll be one in the fall and one in the winter, and then obviously one in the spring. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of the council next year.
All right, so be on the lookout for some informative emails from me. I know that you're all used to them being a little lengthy, but there's a lot of good information in there. So commit to reading the whole thing if you can, and we'll look forward to digging in on another project with you all. It was just an absolute pleasure working with all of you on the school safety brief. As everyone has said, we are so proud of the work that you all did, and you should be very proud of the product that came out of that effort. So here we go again. We'll dig in and have another equally amazing project on the other side here in about a year. So do let me know if you have any questions in the interim. And I do want to say I am looking forward to the presentation that you have to the board this afternoon. We again appreciate your flexibility with all of the excitement around the water main break. If it is appropriate, Tony, I think we may, at the conclusion of the meeting, once the feed has concluded, we'll keep those who are planning to join for the KBE meeting online, and we can do some planning about sort of dividing up slides that maybe don't have an assigned speaker at this time, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that works. Did we have a number? Do we have a couple of students? Was it Bentley and Peter? Did we get any other takers there?
I think we have several that are planning to join. Shraman, I think, said that he could take some additional. So I think we have a few. So if you are available this afternoon, it should be about 2:05 is what we're estimating to log in to support the presentation of the school safety recommendation to the state board. We'd love to have you, even if you did not present as part of the team for Representative Tipton. You are welcome to present this afternoon. You all worked on the brief. So at the conclusion of the meeting today, we'll just stay online and sort of come up with a plan.
All right, that works. And I do think that we will conclude the meeting earlier. Obviously, we go to about noon on these days because of it being an in-person meeting, but because we don't have any built-in time for breaks and lunch, I do think that we'll wrap up here shortly. So you'll have some time back this morning. But as Dr. Brewer stated, that if you are planning to help us with the presentation, just stay online on this link, and we can get with you about that presentation later this afternoon. And I appreciate everyone for signing up to present. I think it'll be a great presentation. You definitely have a friendly audience with our Board of Education.
That's right. Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
All right, I think the next item on the agenda is just some opportunities that we have. I want to make you available of. So I'll go to the slides first, and then I want to talk to you about a few internship opportunities that we have here at the Department of Education that are open for you to consider. The first slide just talks a little bit about some exchange opportunities through the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. I think these are really outstanding opportunities for exploring education and different in an exchange opportunity, and just kind of getting out of your comfort zone of being where you are right now, and perhaps learning in a different environment. So if you're interested in this, all of these slides will be available for you to view after the meeting, along with the exit slip. And just wanted to give this as an opportunity for you all to consider. The next slide. I think there was one more, maybe.
It is appears frozen. I can go back, but not forward. I may
That's
need
really
to
interesting.
may need to reshare. So just a moment, please.
Okay, sounds good. Looks like somebody's still seeing the school safety slide too, so maybe just reshare the screen and then go from there. All right, yes, I think the military affairs, I think that just popped up. I saw it. I don't know if there was something with military affairs, and then I will kick off to Brian here as soon as. The joys of virtual meetings, everyone. Well, while that is loading, I'll go ahead and we'll get back to that slide. I just wanted to briefly provide you some information about some internship opportunities that we have available this summer at the Department of Education. So there's two options. Our first option is with my team in the Division of Communications. As part of this internship, you'll learn a lot about public relations in the K-12 education setting. And a lot of our focus this summer will be on how KDE and our school districts are using federal relief funds to help our students recover academically from the pandemic. So that could be a variety of writing feature stories, providing assistance with presentations that KDE staff provide, writing op-eds, helping out with our social media or video efforts. We're really going to do a real comprehensive plan this summer to really plot out stories so that everyone knows how impactful the pandemic money has been and how it is making a positive impact on our schools and education. All of the stories you get published on Kentucky Teacher and maybe shared in other publications across the state as we share them with media. And we have one opportunity, one slot available that is paid for, it's a full-time paid internship, and then also a few part-time unpaid internships. So that's option number one. The second option is available assisting with our Chief Performance Officer, Karen Dodd. You've met Karen before. She leads an office of researchers, and she is going to be working on a summer research project. And this opportunity would be for you to learn alongside Karen and her team of researchers on a project. And the topic is tracking the impact of COVID-19 disruption in high school on college student enrollment and success rate. I sent this email to you about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it has a link in there where you can read about the project. You do not have to have previous research experience. You all are high school students. However, this is a great opportunity for you to learn some research techniques and data collection and things like that. This would be a 6-week part-time internship here at the department, about 15 hours a week. And there would be a stipend available for you for this work as well. So both of these things will be in the exit slip for you. I just wanted to just briefly let you know about them. And if you have any questions about them, you can reach out to me and also Karen, and we'll provide emails for both of them. I am not seeing the presentation loading. I'm just seeing a circle. Is anybody else seeing a presentation?
I see a
I can see
slide.
it.
Do you see a slide? I do not see a slide. We will just provide those slides to you at the end. It was an opportunity with military affairs. And then I know the next item on the agenda was a legislative overview, from the session from Brian. Brian, are you on?
Yep, I am.
All right.
Let me see
All
if I
right,
can
take it
share
away.
presentation here. Hang on just a second. Okay. Hopefully you all can see the slides. There we go. So just a quick note on the process going forward. Unless the governor calls them into special session, they won't be back until January of 2024. When I did the first couple updates, I said that a special session seemed unlikely, but after yesterday's events, there's maybe a chance that he calls them back to try to do something related to. Sorry, I've got a 4-year-old right beside me. To do something to address the issue around the gun violence. I still think that seems unlikely, but certainly more possible than it was a day or two ago. In terms of the legislation that just got passed, there's a lot of it. So you'll see a bunch of bills here coming up. These 30-day short sessions are only about 20 years old. Before that, they met every other year, which is why we have a biennial budget session every 2 years. And these short sessions were intended to be cleanup sessions where they could make adjustments to legislation that had already been passed, technical changes, that sort of stuff. They've really morphed into just full sessions minus the budget. And again, I think we had 160 education bills on our tracker this year. So just a lot of legislation. But anyway, so the bills that passed, those that have what's called an emergency clause for some or all of the bill go into effect immediately upon enrollment. Those without go into effect 90 days after sine die, which is the last day of the session. And so that the Attorney General issues an opinion every year shortly after the session ends to set that exact date. So this year, non-emergency legislation goes into effect Thursday, June 29th. All right, so with that, we'll go through the bills. I've listed all of them just for reference, but I don't think we'll talk about all of them because there's so many. Also remember that bills 1 through 10 for each chamber are generally considered to be the priority bills for the chamber for that session. So the lower bills are generally the more important ones in terms of priority for the chamber. So SB 5 is one that you all probably heard discussed quite a bit on social media and in the news as it moved through the process. This was commonly called a book banning bill. I don't think it goes quite that far, but it does allow for parental challenges to material, programs, and events that may be harmful to minors. A lot of districts already had something like this in place. This just kind of codifies it and sets up parameters that are the same for everybody. So this bill also requires the department to put out a model policy for districts to use. We have started to work on that in conjunction with the School Board Association because they put out model policies for districts that I think that every district now utilizes that resource. So we want to make sure we're putting out essentially the same guidance on that one. So SB 7 is one that may not make a whole lot of sense, but it is addressing the automatic deduction of dues or fees associated with labor organizations for political activities. So careful. It'll just make some changes to the way that those organizations that represent folks like teachers can collect dues and fees. SB 9 was more targeted toward the post-secondary side, but I think it's important to note that they did pass an anti-hazing bill this session. And so I know that's a concern for a lot of folks and one that has gotten a lot more attention in the last few years. certainly since I was in school a long time ago, when no one talked about it. So it's good to see something like this get passed. SB 25 is interesting. It relates to what are called post-secondary readiness indicators. So the big change here is that they want us as a department, to figure out a way to allow for a student that has work-based learning experiences outside of the classroom. So over the summer, for example, how can those potentially count toward being post-secondary ready? The important thing to note here is that it's not just wide open. Those experiences will have to be approved by the Board of Education. So we've already started, I say we collectively, our Office of Career and Technical Education has already started to think through this, and along with Dr. Brewer and some others, about how this is going to look and what role the board will play in the big change, but it's an interesting one, and so we'll continue to work on that. SB 49 was related to alternative teacher certification, so folks that are becoming teachers through a non-traditional path, so not through a traditional 4-year university program. SB 70 is a good example of what the session was really intended for. There was a pilot project that got started before COVID hit. COVID obviously threw that off. This is literally just resetting the time frame for the pilot. So I just like to point out that I think that that's the kind of legislation that these were intended for originally. But as you can see, they've really just morphed into normal full sessions minus the budget. Let's see. So SB 156 is one that the department's very excited about. So this will allow the department to do a new RFP. So that's a request for proposals, essentially a bid out a new statewide reading research center. And so it's very exciting for us. Our chief academic officer has worked really hard on this one. So we're very excited to see this one get across the finish line and to get that project up and running. SB 169 is one that was interesting for me because I came from the post-secondary side. And so these public-private partnerships, or P3s, are very common in post-secondary at this point. But I was not aware that this is a relatively new concept on the secondary side. So in any case, districts and school boards will now be able to enter into these public-private partnerships. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what comes about because of that. SB 107, I'm sure you all have heard discussed a little bit. It makes a big change to the way the Commissioner of Education will be hired in the state of Kentucky. It will require the person to be confirmed by the state Senate upon hiring, and then every 4 years thereafter, assuming that they get a contract renewal. So there's no limit to the amount of contracts they can get. So there's no term limit per se, but they will have to be reconfirmed every time they get a new contract. So it's a big switch. Let's see. So SB 150, I'll just give you the very short version. This is probably the most controversial piece of legislation that got passed during the session. It started out as just SB 150, which was what we thought would be the parental rights bill that was going to move forward. Late in the session, it got most of what was in House Bill 470 added to it. That was the bill that addressed medical care for transgendered people under the age of 18. And then it also got a little bit of what was in House Bill 30, which related to facility use by transgendered students. And so it's now a bit of a combination of all those bills. Again, very controversial when it was going through the process. And we'll be putting out just essentially what all is in the bill, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, because I know a lot of districts have already started to ask about that one. SB 247 is another interesting bill. It allows students that move within the district during the school year to stay in the same school, but it does allow for the superintendent to evaluate whether or not that's going to be a burdensome transportation request. So it gives them a little flexibility there. Obviously, we have some big districts, and the transportation piece will be kind of a critical element. But it's a well-intentioned bill, and hopefully it will allow some students to be a little more stable. Senate Joint Resolution 98. This is from President Stivers in the Senate, and it is directing the Council on Post-Secondary Education to essentially do a review of post-secondary education in the Commonwealth. This is primarily because it's been a long time since we've done this. So way back in 1997, there was a special session that created what we now know as the Council on Post-Secondary Education and the two-year community college system in the state, KCTCS. And so this bill is kind of directing the council to do a review of the entire system with a special interest in looking at potentially putting a 4-year public university in true Southeast Kentucky. So right now we don't have a public institution really in the southeast corner of the state. We have UPike, which is a private, and then we have 3 public 2-year institutions all in that general area. So it's asking about the feasibility of putting a 4-year residential university down there, which would be another regional university. It also is directing them to look at this idea of taking gen ed courses back from KCTCS, essentially putting them only with the regional universities, which I think then would revert KCTCS back to the old technical college system that was pre-merger in '97. That's a big switch. And I think that there'll be a lot of interest in, if they were to do that, what role would our Office of Career and Technical Education play in that system? And the other big question that I've been getting about this that I didn't really hear discussed a lot was the impact on dual credit. And so I've gotten a lot of folks asking me about that, but it really wasn't brought up a whole lot in conversation about this. So we'll see where it goes. But I'm putting, even though it's really kind of directed at post-secondary, I wanted to mention it because it could be a very big shift coming depending on where they go with it. All right. So that's the Senate side. Again, I didn't touch on all the bills, but trying to hit the highlights here. If you have any questions about bills, we can talk about them when I get done here in a second. Hang on just 1 second. Sorry, my helper is getting a little restless. All right, so House Bill 3 was one of the juvenile justice bills that we saw. You may have seen in the media, there's a lot of concerns about the juvenile justice system in the state right now. So there were several bills trying to address various things with that. I mentioned this one because there was a truancy piece of the bill in there that relates to us. House Bill 5 is a really interesting one that's pretty complicated. So it addresses one of our signature industries in the state, which is the bourbon industry, which, as some of you probably have noticed over the last few years, has really started to boom, right? The popularity of bourbon, the popularity of the Bourbon Trail has really taken off. But we're one of the only states that has a tax on the barrels of bourbon as they age. And that money has gone to local governments to fund things like fire, EMS, and schools. So they're phasing that out. And so there's a potential impact for school districts. And we'll have to just kind of see how that plays out. It's definitely over my head in terms of getting down in the weeds. House Bill 13 is another good example of what the session was really intended for. It just changes the time period required for school bus drivers to get their physical exams from 12 to 24 months. The 24 months is the federal requirement, so it really just brings us in line with the federal requirement. House Bill 32 will allow school districts to hire classified personnel without a high school diploma or equivalent, as long as they provide a pathway to get one at no cost to the employee. So I've mentioned, as I thought about this one, there was some interesting discussions about it because obviously I think there was some concern about school districts hiring folks without a high school diploma. But as I thought about it, I thought that there's a certain amount of equity interest at play here because there's a lot of reasons someone might not finish school, but then could have a commercial driver's license or something like that that could allow them to help fill a critical need for the school right now. So we'll see how it plays out. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought that there was some equity involved in that one. House Bill 244 relates to the Kentucky Guard Youth Challenge Program. Let's see. 319 we'll talk about here in a few minutes, because that was the big teacher recruitment and retention omnibus bill. And an omnibus bill is just a bill that has a lot of different components in it that all revolve around or relate to a common theme. So we'll swing back to that one here in a second. 331 requires automatic defibrillators in school buildings. 538 was the big student discipline bill. A lot of talk about student discipline going into the session. And so this was the attempt at addressing it. And the thing to think about here, to be aware of, is that there's a lot of work as this bill moved to really find the right balance of how do you address a complicated issue like student discipline and balance everybody's rights, right? So you want to find that right mix of giving some more tools to the teacher and the administrators, but also protecting the rights of students. And there was definitely some concern that earlier versions of the bill could have adversely impacted students of color more than white students. And so I was pretty impressed with the work that went into this one in terms of trying to find that balance and thinking about all those concerns. So 540 relates to the discussion earlier about school safety. It extends SROs to private and parochial schools. 547 relates to a Supreme Court decision that originated out of Washington State, where I believe it was a football coach prayed before or after a game. And so this is trying to shore up First Amendment rights around private religious expressions. Again, I think the interesting thing about this one is how it could also apply to teachers of other faiths, other than Protestant, mainstream Christian faith. So again, I don't know that that's who they were targeting with the bill, but I think that there's certainly teachers out there with other beliefs that this might cover. So something to think about. 553 is one that, again, is a little down the weeds, but I'll try to do the quick explanation. So when COVID hit, the SEEK funding formula, the formula which funds school districts, got frozen. And all that means is we basically kept the same numbers pre-COVID for the last few years. And so you had districts that had growth, so have more students now than they did back then. But they weren't getting any additional funding for those students. And we finally got some language really late in the session that we think will take care of those growth districts this year. So that's good news. And then starting next fall, we go back to essentially real-time SEEK numbers. So that will take care of that. All right, so that's the really quick rundown of the legislation that got passed. Like I said, we can talk more here in a second if you have questions about anything. I will note that one bill that didn't get across the finish line that I hope we will see again next session was House Bill 196. That was the Safe Kentucky app, which again relates to that school safety conversation you all had. It's based on the Safe Utah app, and it would have provided mental health services access to students via the app. And the mental health services would have been provided through U of L's Peace Hospital. And so hopefully we'll see some version of that return down the line. And then the other bill that didn't make it across the finish line that I'm almost positive we'll see some version of again is House Bill 288. That was the teacher misconduct bill. So the Herald Leader ran a series of articles right around the first of the year about teachers that have allegations or potential misdeeds, kind of moving districts and avoiding ever having a finding. And so again, there was a lot of concern about how do you kind of tighten up some principles, but also balance the rights of teachers and not goes too far the other direction. And so I think we'll see work on that bill continue in the interim. I believe both those bills got out of the House, so we'll almost certainly see them refiled again. So back to 319, the teacher omnibus bill. I'll just run through some of the stuff that's in it real quick and then take questions. Probably the biggest thing in the bill right now is that first one, the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact. And so teachers are licensed by each state, and these compacts allow for reciprocity of those licenses. And so the Military Affairs was real interested in this because they have two big bases here in the state. So they have a lot of spouses coming in and out with service members. And these compacts allow for folks that are coming into the state that have a license from another state for an occupation to teach. I think 10 states have to sign on to the compact for it to kick into effect. And then I'm not sure how close we are, but we're one closer now since we have passed it. Section 2 mandates that KDE come up with an exit survey for district employees that are leaving voluntarily. And I think the intent here is really to get those early career teachers that are leaving in those first, say, 2, 3, 4 years to see why they're leaving. So we have better data on why folks that have entered the profession are not staying. And again, I think the real target here are early career teachers that are leaving for non-teaching profession, right? And so I think there'll be some interest in teachers that are moving districts, certainly, but I think the real interest is going to be those teachers that are leaving the profession altogether very early in their career. Section 3 is related to this topic. You may have heard there were a lot of questions early in the session about the actual number of teacher vacancies in the state. Section 3 is trying to address that a little bit and getting the department to have better job data on teacher openings. Section 4 makes some changes to the existing teacher scholarship program. So we have a program in the state right now. It's funded about $1 million a year. This just changes some of the language of the scholarship. And then I think you'll see an ask next session to expand the funding for that, but we'll see. Section 5 is more alternative route stuff. Let's see, Section 6 is again job posting related. Section 7 comes back to the alternative certification. So we have 9 options right now, 9 non-traditional pathways that you can become a teacher by. Some of them have very little participation, and this is just directing the department to do a review of all the pathways and make some recommendations, including potentially consolidating some, getting down to a smaller number of pathways, that sort of thing. Section 8 creates a new interim certificate for folks with a bachelor's degree and 4 years of work experience that are going to teach in that same field. So, and then sections 9 and 10 are just some cleanup languages about how teachers and other staff take sick and personal time. So that's what was in the omnibus. It's a lot smaller than when we started, but it's a good first step. And I definitely think we will see conversations continue in the interim around this, and then likely see additional legislation next session. So I think that's all I have. So I'm going to stop sharing, and if we have questions, I'll be happy to take them.
All right, guys.
Are there any questions?
I don't looking to see if there was anything.
I know it's a lot to take in all at once.
Looks like Jennifer mentioned that her office, KOHS, is working with Representative Fleming and U of L on the possibility of combining their proposed Safe Kentucky tip line to the Stop Tip line. So that's one there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea, right? This idea of giving students access to mental health services via an app. It's a very modern solution. And I think that for folks in the rural areas, it would make an awful lot of sense. My parents are from far rural Western Kentucky. And I think about students, in their hometown that has no stoplight, trying to access mental health services. The app would be a game changer. a lot different than up here in, Lexington and Louisville and Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. So anyway.
All right. All right,
Well,
guys.
thanks. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. So.
Yeah, and Brian will, as always, put the link. We'll put some information for them in the exit slip and provide that feedback to you.
Sure.
All right. Thank you for the time this morning.
No problem.
And I think our next item is going to be our recognition of our seniors, which will not be terribly exciting since we're virtual. But I did want to, I'm not sure if we have a slide or not for that, but I just wanted to briefly recognize the work of our seniors. We have a couple that have been on our advisory council for 3 years. And really, whether you all have been on the council for 3 years or 2 years or just this 1 year, just want to speak to how valuable, we've already mentioned this earlier, your feedback has been not just to us at the Department of Education, but to our legislature. Representative Tipton had mentioned how impressed he was with your presentation. I know that our State Board of Education is very proud of you as well. And lots of school districts have enacted advisory councils that are in place now because of many of you all and having that voice. So really appreciative to all of our students, but really sad also to see our seniors leave. I think we have about 17. Glyptosan might be able to come in and provide me some numbers, but I think we have about 17 of you all that are seniors. We have a graduation cord for you that we're going to present to you today, along with a certificate signed by the commissioner and myself that you can have in addition to a pin. So it'll be really important in your exit slip to provide us with your most current address. I know that some of you may have moved from the beginning of the year. Just want to make sure we have your current addresses so that we can get those to you in time for your graduation. And then also just to, put a note out there, because the next time that we meet on May 30th, many of you will have already graduated, that we will be looking for graduation photos. So please feel free to share those with us, in particular Caleb, who will be sharing those out on the student at the student council or the student advisory council social media and on the Kentucky Department of Education Instagram pages. We're also now on LinkedIn, which has been pretty popular with a different, like a business community. We've been receiving really good numbers and feedback and impact with our LinkedIn account too. So that's going to be something that we will be exploring here in the next year, and how we can expand that to different audience, and also introduce students to, creating a good LinkedIn page for potential employment. So those are all things that are kind of on the horizon. So just remember to make sure you send your graduation pictures to us. We will get those cords and certificates and things out to you probably end of this week or early next week. So just look for those. You should have those within, I'd say, about 10 to 14 days. If you don't receive them, we'll send you an email to let you know when we email them out. If you do not receive them, just let us know, and we'll be sure to find a way to get those to you. So I'm not sure if any of our seniors have any words of wisdom or I know this isn't our final meeting, but just maybe some favorite moments that they'd like to share. It was really nice to hear Anastasia talk about the equity project. That feels like that was about 10 years ago because of COVID. But what a great example of leadership from this council. I know Dr. Woods Tucker played a role in that, as well as Dr. Sweeney and the DEIB team. Just didn't know if anybody wanted to elaborate. Any of our seniors wanted to share now some words from your time on the council, or Dr. Woods Tucker as well. All right. Well, you all will have plenty of time to offer some words of wisdom at the next meeting. In the exit slip, I am putting an option in there to discuss about the May 30th meeting. Since we were not able to meet in Frankfort for this meeting, I'm just going to explore the option with you to see if you have a preference to coming to Frankfort for the May meeting. We would need to know pretty quickly. So when you fill out the survey, just let us know what your preference would be, if you'd like it to be in person or to be virtual. It would give you one last opportunity to see us in person before the school year is over with. As you know, we don't have student advisory meetings in the summer. We'll resume in August. And we will be inviting all of our new council members to join us virtually. So regardless of whether you're there in person or virtual, we will have our new student advisory council members just join us for a brief moment to introduce themselves and perhaps hear some words from our current council. Any questions on that? Okay. Also, just want to give a quick shout out to the Kentucky School for the Deaf. Bentley, I know, has been working on a piece. It is their 200th anniversary celebration. Yesterday was actually the day, April 10th. We have an incredible story that Joe Regresa from our team has put up on social media. And he's also working on a video that I think may or may not be ready for the Board of Education meeting today or tomorrow. But really an incredible story of success. And many of you may not know that KSD was one of the first, if not the first school that opened to support deaf or hard of hearing students. And we're extremely proud to have KSD as one of our schools, and one in particular that we get to visit on a regular basis. So congratulations to KSD, and we'll be happy to share the link. And if you have a chance to share that with your communities, that would be great, as KSD does support counties, all of our county districts and students that attend statewide. And there you go, first school for the deaf west of the Allegheny Mountains. So there's another Jeopardy fact for you. Getting lots of facts, rock and roll facts, and some school facts for you today. All right, I think that is it for the meeting today. We'll wrap up about 45 minutes ahead of time. And I do want to just remind you all that if you are going to present to the Kentucky Board of Education this afternoon, if you can start, I'm sorry, I got distracted by the comments. If you could stay online, we will wrap up the meeting and we'll get that exit slip to you along with the slides for today. I appreciate everyone's support. Dr. Woods Tucker, did you want to close us out?
Tony, before you do that, I actually put in the comments, Bentley is actually working with a team at KSD to start up a school publication. So he might want to share just briefly about that as part of the celebration of the 200th anniversary.
Sure, Bentley, go ahead.
So our school's had a school publication for like forever, but in the in 2003 it got like put on hiatus, and now after 20 years we're finally starting it back up, and we are finally publishing in the next few weeks. So great.
That is super exciting. Super exciting. I know that we've been working on some quotes and things, and I'm really excited about the time capsule on Friday to see what is unearthed and what you guys are putting back into another time capsule. I don't know, I'm kind of a geek when it comes to those things. I really like to kind of see what's in those things. I get really excited about time capsules. I don't know what it is, but so really excited to see that. I know we're going to try to cover that and provide a media opportunity as well. So. And please, when the publication, I know you'll share it with us, but share it with your council members as well, and we'll be happy to promote it. And if you need any help, let us know. All right, Dr. Woods Tucker, do you want to close us out?
Yes, anytime I have an opportunity to speak, I will. I'll be very, very brief though. Wow, what a very exciting meeting, and students, thank you for being vulnerable, because you really set the stage for students, for public education here across the Commonwealth. So thank you for choosing to lead. Bentley, please be sure that we are able to be subscribers here at KDE. I'm really excited about the newsletter. And again, I said I was going to stop talking, but I'm going back to high school when I hear all these great things that are happening. Speaking of our School for the Deaf, we, in my alma mater back in Arkansas, one of our main competitors were the competitors was actually the Little Rock, the Arkansas School for the Deaf in Little Rock, and Bentley and other folks here may be aware of that school. And so I remember those days, and it was one of the last teams that I played football when I was in high school. So please enjoy, seniors, enjoy this time. We are so thankful for you. You've been tremendous leaders, and I can call out 15 or 20 of you, but thank you for those of you who've been here for this ride. And Anastasia, thanks for your wonderful comments in helping to lead this equity work. And this equity work won't be led and won't have an opportunity to continue with older people like me. It'll be our younger folks and great leaders like you. And so thank you for the fruits of your labor. Thanks, Tony.
All right, guys. Well, thanks much. We'll see you, some of you at the KBE meeting this afternoon. It is virtual. You'll be able to tune in if you'd like via the media portal. And we'll go ahead and adjourn today's meeting.